Good morning. Thank you once again. Just as an introduction, my name's Nigel Roddy. I'm the Sales Director for Marlow Kitchen Fire Suppression. To my right, I've got Stephen Jordan, who's Business Development Manager. And to my left, I've got Debbie Annis, who's Account Manager for Restaurant Systems. So we probably all know of each other. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do a brief intro into the Ansell system. I'll keep that brief. We'll then move on to show you a video of the Ansell system activating and extinguishing the fire. And then to talk about the content of the webinar, as in the Ansell interfaces and shutdowns, why they're required and how they're done. Any questions during the webinar you can raise on the webinar format itself, and at the end of the webinar, we'll review all the questions and answer them as fully as we can. So moving on, if we look at kitchen fire suppression as a whole, it doesn't really matter which brand of kitchen suppression is being used. There are some fundamental tests that need to be done. So the testing standards are UL 300, LPS 1223, and BSEM 17446. The latter one is a very, very new testing standard that manufacturers are currently testing to, and that will be in place probably over the coming months. An important consideration in these testing standards is the one test that is done out of probably the 15-16 tests is a reignition test. So it checks that once the fire has been extinguished, that there's no reignition of the fire following 20 minutes, I believe, and probably need to confirm that time, but I believe it's 20 minutes. So the kitchen fire suppression systems cover the cooking appliances, the plenum in the ventilation canopy, and the ductwork. From Marlow Kitchen Fire Suppression point of view, we standardise on the Ansell R102 product. It's been the market leader for a number of years since it came in 1962. So it's reliable, reputable, and does exactly what it says on the tin. What we'll do now is we'll show a video that it's carried out at our test facility here in Wellingborough, where we let a deep fat fryer ignite, there's a fire, and then the system suppresses it. So we'll just play that video now. As you can see, the fire on deep fat fryer grows very, very quickly, and you can get a very large fire within minutes. The Ansell system is really reliable and effective in extinguishing that fire, and the fire is usually extinguished within the first 3 seconds. There's probably another 50 seconds that follows with release of the liquid that aids with the cooling process. So when we talk about interfaces, there are a number of relay or micro switches within the Ansell unit that we wire out into an interface box by the side of the tanks to allow third parties to make connections into. So what I'll do is I'll run through what those various interfaces can be and which are mandatory and which are optional. So if I start with a fire alarm connection, that's probably one of the most common ones that gets highlighted. Now, that fire alarm connection is not mandatory to any of the testing standards or the ANSL manual. That is purely a customer specific option if they want to alert their fire alarm system that the kitchen suppression system has activated. Now, on occasions, it can be used to do some of the shutdowns, and the more common one, and probably the only one it does, is the gas supply. Most fire alarms will interface to the house gas system, and therefore when it's triggered it will shut down the gas supply. That will then obviously shut down the gas supply to the cooking appliances. One thing to be aware of though is that is usually the main valve for the building, so this will also affect your boilers, water heating and any other service that's connected to the gas. So more commonly and practically, you'd probably want to do a separate connection to the gas valve, gas interlock system within the kitchen. So when looking at the fire alarm, really need to see whether it is connected to the gas and make the customer aware that it will shut the whole gas supply down. The one thing the fire alarm is unlikely to do is to shut down any electrical appliances on that cook line. And there's a possibility it may shut down the ventilation, but again, that probably needs to be questioned with the ventilation contractor or the customer. So if we move on to appliance shutdown, it doesn't matter whether the appliances are gas or electric, they should be shut down on activation of the ANSL system. I will say there, it's only the protected appliances. So basically anything that's got a nozzle above it, that appliance should shut down. So items like combi ovens will not be required to shut down. Yeah, typical gas shutdowns can be achieved through gas interlock, the emergency stop button that will be within the kitchen, and also the main gas valve in the kitchen. It can also be done through the BMS system. So it just needs the conversation to see which is the easiest supply to get to shut down. If the appliances are electrical, then this makes it a little bit more difficult because we need to provide a contactor, or a contactor will need to be provided per appliance to be able to shut down. Now, we're not electrical qualified people, so how that's done is really deemed to be by the electrical contractor. But there's normally open and normally closed connections within the interface box that we supply. We can go through the detail of that separately on a site-by-site basis. The air intake shutdown. Now it's only the air intake that is coming in through the ventilation canopy. So if there's air intake coming through the building through the ceiling tiles, that doesn't need to be shut down. It's only the forced ventilation that is actually coming through the ventilation canopy. Now, how that is shut down, I'm not entirely sure. The BMS system, the mechanical ventilation controls, or maybe even if there's a local speed controller for the air intake, removing the power to that would then shut down the air intake. One of the requirements in the ANSL manual is that the extraction fans continue to run. Now, if it's easier that it shuts down both the extraction and the air intake, that is okay, because the ANSL system has been approved with or without the extraction fans operating. So if that's a requirement, that's okay, and the system will be compliant. So The background on this, there's always been a requirement to connect kitchen suppression systems, ANSEL systems to achieve these shutdowns to prevent reignition. So we detail this requirement in our quotation and advise that it's excluded from the works that we do. However, one thing that we do install is an interface box by the side of the tanks, due to third parties being reluctant to access the inner workings of the ANSEL tanks in fear of setting the system off. The reality is that would never happen, but it makes it easier. So we put an interface box on the side of the tanks with a wiring diagram in there, and obviously if people need any assistance with that, they can ring the MKFS office and we'll advise. In 2017, there was at last a British standard that was produced, BSEM 16282 Part 7. Now, within that standard, it does actually confirm about appliance shutdown and the need to do that. We've also experienced through third-party auditing accreditation. So BSEM 206 was introduced, which from your point monitors us to make sure that we're doing the installations to the manual, to the specifications, and to the appropriate standards. So we get audited every year by BAE to ensure that on either install or service, we're doing the right things. And one of the items that is brought up is the shutdown connections and the shutting down of the appliances and the air intake. Over the last few years, we've also seen increased awareness of insurance companies who are looking at not only wanting fire suppression systems to be installed, but also the shutdown connections been undertaken. So once again, it prevents the reignition of the fire. So within MKFS, what we've decided to do now, we always have had this in the quotation, so that's evident from there. We will now send on, particularly on an installation project, the checklist that we sent out will include whether appliance shutdowns and air intake shutdowns have been arranged, and we've organised a new handover certificate, which will be more clear and to the point. So it'll detail appliance shutdown connected, air intake shutdown connected, system operational, and also system compliant. In addition to this, we've sent technical bulletins to all our engineers, sales, management, and admin teams, so that they are all aware of what these requirements are and what we're doing as a business. We will also be arranging consultation with customers via separate meeting, email, and webinars such as this. I mentioned earlier that our engineers are purely mechanical, which they are. We've now been on a recruitment process and we are recruiting electrical engineers. So what it will mean is that we can offer this service moving forward. However, that's an optional one. This can be done by other third parties or arrangements by yourselves with other subcontractors. But it's there as a service we can provide. That's really the end of the webinar. More than happy to take any questions and discuss them.
Hi, well, I'm Debbie, and I was introduced at the start. We have had one question come in. I'll just read it out. So the first question we've got is, why is this just come into force? I'll pick this up. So as Nigel mentioned, we had the new BS standards that come into force back in 2017. It's not. This isn't a new regulation. It's always been part of the manufacturer standards. This new standard just enforced it more, and it brought in obviously a detailed requirement of what is required. In addition, working with insurance companies, we're aware that they are going out and doing audits on systems that have been installed and are checking if those connections have been done. We also have third-party audits from BAFE SP206, and again, their accreditation is to check for those shutdown requirements. So we've got another question here. Why do you have to shut down the appliances when Ansell discharges? Stefan, are you okay with that one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so you have to be shut down in the event of discharge. Appliances almost shut down. We must shut down the connector for gas or electric, the connector for reignition, which is paramount that doesn't happen.
So Andrew, can we confirm also that installation of a kitchen suppression system is not a regulation requirement, but more risk insurance based?
Okay, I can take that. There's no mandatory requirement for kitchen fire suppression system to be installed. There is a legal obligation by the customer to produce a fire risk assessment. Now, obviously, in a fire risk assessment, if you walk into a commercial kitchen, the risk is evident right in front of you. But the customer could choose to select portable extinguishers and fire blankets to fight that fire that's created. So whilst that's the legal requirement to the fire risk assessment, it's not a legal requirement to install a fixed fire suppression system. However, what we're finding is that more insurance companies and landlords, particularly landlords where they've got sleeping accommodation above, will now insist that a fire suppression system is installed.
Right, so we have another question here. Do canopy capture jet fans need to shut down?
Right, okay. So if I'm understanding this right, the capture jet fans, if it's extraction, it would be preferable that they carry on running. However, if they shut down, it's not a problem because the Ansell system is still authorised and approved and accredited with the extract fans running or not running. It's the forced air intake. So where that forced air comes through, say the front of the ventilation canopy, that's the fans that need to be shut down.
We have another question here. We train our electrical engineers. I'm assuming we'd be able to give advice on what's required. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We can train your electrical engineers onto the connections that are needed. However, like I said, we're not electrically qualified to advise on every site, but in terms of the connection and what it needs to do and to our box, absolutely.
Oh, so you've got one here. If fire dampers are installed in the extraction duct, do you recommend removal or decommission of these, or can they remain in place subject to appropriate maintenance or testing?
I think that's one for probably the mechanical ventilation. I don't see any problem with a damper being in the duct from the fire suppression point of view, because I guess that damper will operate when a fire is detected. So that may be one for the ventilation standards or ductwork standards that doesn't really apply to fire suppression.
Okay, so we've got, can you install your kit prior to the equipment being installed? So yeah, we will always need the fire suppression, the cooking equipment to be in place before we install the fire suppression system, unless of course we're going to be installing a flood coverage system. We'd only need the canopy to be in place. With regards to the additional connections we're talking about, ideally there needs to be someone in attendance on the day to connect into our interface panel. That will then allow our engineer to test those connections and update the commissioning certificate. If for any reason that can't be done on the same day, it may be that we just need to factor in another visit to do to come back and do a witness test to check those connections.
Could just add to that's completely right. But there is also, we've actually done a little video to show how to test that system without having to activate the Ansel system. So it may well be that either yourself or your contractors that are undertaking that work could do that test and then advise us that the shutdowns did occur, and then we could update the certificate to confirm that.
Right, yeah. Just reading, I think this might have just partly answered your question. We've got the biggest problem we face with installation is the final connection of the interface. Almost every time the site electrician engineer will not be able to do it as it's a third party equipment to them. Is this something that you could undertake moving forward?
Absolutely. So we can undertake this work at the same time that we do the installation of the fire suppression system, assuming all the electrical supplies are in place. But yeah, even if that's visiting, 1 or 2 days after, it's a separate team that will be doing it, so it will not be a problem.
Do we need your engineer in attendance if we are only connecting directly to the microswitch?
Right. Okay. So in the Ansel manual, it actually requests that there's no wiring connections within the Ansel tank. So that's where the microswitches are. If we've got an interface box there on the side, then yes, you can make those connections straight in. There's a little wiring diagram that shows where our microswitches are connected and where you connect into. It's made really easy because it's just pushing connections, wagging clips. So yeah, absolutely.
Can you confirm the BSEM reference for appliance shutdown requirements? Yeah, so it's BSEN 16282 and it's part 7 of that standard. So can we share this webinar with some of the M&E contractors we work with, as they often don't understand what is required reconnection to buildings BMS?
Right. Okay. So that we can send over to you. More than happy to undertake another one with another group of clients, and yeah, and we can do that.
Right, I think that's covered everything then. If there's any other questions, let us know. We can pick them up on calls or emails separately.
Yeah, so you've got your account contacts. Please feel free to contact either of us, and we can answer any questions you've got. Once again, thank you for your time in attending the webinar, and have a good day.
Thank you.